This is Coder Radio, episode 574 for June 11th, 2024. Hey friend, welcome into Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and the business, the software development, and the world of technology. My name is Chris, and our host, sitting over there right now at his station, ready to go, it's Mr. Dominic. Hello, Mike.
Hello. I have just, I'm a little exhausted today because I was running an obstacle course against Craig Federighi.
Yeah, man.
And obviously he put me to shame.
Yeah, who knew? Who knew?
I honestly thought I was watching a video out of one of the Assassin's Creed games.
You know, when he contacted the show and said, I want to do a parkour competition with Mike, I thought, well, this is going to be easy. Mike's watched YouTube. Craig's a software engineer and exec. I think Mike's going to have this in the bag. Who knew? Jeez, I didn't know.
He's a legend.
One thing I wanted to get right off the top of our WWDC episode, and that is what this episode is I think there's one of the bigger stories that isn't getting much attention yet because we don't have all the details. But I feel like this promise Apple made about just somehow offloading AI workloads to these new super secure compute systems they have, where they're doing some kind of third-party audit and Apple can't access the data, and Apple can't even do legal requests to turn the data over. And Apple also said, for the first time, I think, they're using Apple's own SoCs in the data center. And you think those things are running Mac OS, Mike?
I would bet my hat they're not, right? It's got to be.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess Ubuntu.
I'm betting Apple is writing Swift apps in-house to make all of this run on Linux.
Oh, so you think they're actually writing custom? I didn't think of that.
Yeah, because they specifically mentioned in the keynote that all of the server-side applications were written in Swift for this.
Oh, that's right. I guess they must be. So it's interesting. I wonder what they're using. Something homegrown, or are they? I mean,
I don't know.
It's got to be something homegrown because like a Vapor wouldn't make sense for this.
Right. I bet you it's Debian based or something. Yeah. Right. Well, there is the Asahi project, but that's mostly Fedora focused now, which is not probably going to be Apple's top choice for a server OS.
No, I think Apple does Ubuntu. I know. They used to do. Oh, Jesus! Maybe I shouldn't say because I might have this wrong. But I think modern Apple for new stuff does use Ubuntu, which is weird because you think they'd be the BSD people, right?
Yeah, right. That's. I had lunch with a listener years ago who worked at Apple in Austin, and he worked on Ubuntu systems. So I think you're right. He was doing Ubuntu.
Yeah. How
this system works is kind of interesting. So I guess there's some sort of check, and it's like it checks to see if you have capabilities on device. And if you don't, then it somehow offloads the task. They say your data is never stored on their system. It's only used temporarily, like in, I don't know, a RAM disk or something. They claim all of this is verifiable by a third party, that they put it into some kind of encryption log, some sort of time-sequenced encryption log that sounds like blockchain but isn't. And they say they're setting a new standard in privacy for AI.
Which it says a lot while managing to say almost nothing.
Right.
What does that mean exactly?
I don't know, but this problem of how do we solve the fact that it's going to need bigger and bigger compute resources to have fancier and fancier services that we can trust. And they kind of outlined this whole problem. I'm not saying this is it, but if they have designed something here, and they are putting out docs about this, there does seem to be some documentation. And I've gone through the early stuff at this point. This may actually be a standard other cloud providers could follow. And it seemingly starts at the supply chain. Like they are doing super high resolution image capture of every component on these servers at the point of manufacturing and then verifying them when they're in the rack to make sure no components have been swapped.
That's interesting. I mean, so I think we're going to get into this, but the question of, okay, how does this all exactly work in terms of your data, especially once you cross the Rubicon to OpenAI or ChatGPT, or I guess it doesn't matter, you can use them interchangeably. In terms of privacy, because I think we can all agree OpenAI uses everybody's data, and if you're Scarlett Johansson, your voice, apparently. How is Apple guaranteeing...
They could use mine.
You're volunteering? I don't say that out loud. It sounds like, okay, cool. Thanks, bro.
I'm good with it.
I got to be honest, just overall, this WWDC, I felt like if you took a hatchet and cut out all the OpenAI stuff, there was like not a lot there. Even the State of the Union, there wasn't so much there for developers. And honestly, the big accomplishment this year was they wrote a big check to Sam Altman, is what it sounds like.
So Sam Altman was in the crowd at WWDC, but never got any screen time.
I was shocked.
I don't know if that's the nature of the deal coming together at the last minute, or if that's just because they were trying to. Here's the thing, Mike. They basically split the whole keynote in half. The first half was the platform updates, which we could talk about, and the second half was Apple Intelligence. And 2 minutes and like basically just under 3 minutes was dedicated to talking about OpenAI. They really underplay the OpenAI integration.
Well, but the thing is, like those features for Apple Intelligence, OpenAI a couple weeks ago opened release rather a Mac app that does many of the things that those features are. And I have a feeling that basically they're just integrating the features of that application into the platform. Right, the OpenAI's ChatGPT native Mac app can read your screen. It can if you point it to a window, read and work with text there, images, etc., etc. So I was watching this thing, thinking, I've literally seen this demo before. Just now, it's like built into, we'll call it the LadyTube name. I don't want to say and trigger everybody's stuff, but the S lady, right?
Slow-mo.
Sally, we'll call her.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm being negative. I know the Volumetrics API for Vision Pro looks interesting, but I definitely got the impression that they were running away from that Vision Pro.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. All right. So let's get into the platforms. Coder.show/membership. Head on over there, support the show directly, and if you use the promo code Darth Jar Jar, it'll take $1 off your membership for a year. This applies to new members, existing members as a thank you, or those of you that are reactivating a subscription that somehow maybe expired. Somehow, those things happen. There are just a couple of redemptions left, like less than 2 handfuls, like 1 handful of redemptions left. There's 1 handful of redemptions left to help support the show directly and get an ad-free version of the show. And there's a new Coder QA in the kitchen right now, maybe coming out really close to when you listen to this. That's a brand new episode exclusive to our members. The Coderly episode, not the Coder. It's a mess. I don't even know what I'm talking about, do I? What I do know is it's something that's worth listening to. Gosh darn it. Coder.show/membership. Use the promo code Darth Jar Jar and shout out. Now, I am recording ahead of time. I am in the future. So you could have an opportunity when we get back in 2 weeks to show up in the membership signups and be like, oh, look at all these members. Well, we got 2 since our last episode. Chow Wang, thank you, and Isaiah. Thank you very much for becoming Coder QA members. It's coder.show/membership. Support the show directly. Apple Vision Pro was one of the very first devices or platforms they talked about. And, man, so like the stuff that is even good for Apple Vision Pro isn't even landing until later in the year, like that new wider Mac display stuff, which is like the bare minimum they needed to do, doesn't even land, I think, in the fall. I'm getting real HomePod hi-fi vibes here, just bare minimum updates. It doesn't seem any of the integrated AI features in mail or messages or any of that stuff is also coming to Vision Pro. It has to sit this whole thing out.
Well, it seems like they're making a course correction, you could say, away from the $3,500. I don't even know what you want to call it.
Yeah, it just seems to me in a healthy functioning company, your $3,500 device that you literally just launched a few months ago would be like the premier device that gives you like the best AI Apple Intelligence experience there is. Yeah. Instead of not at all. It's bad.
You wouldn't be grasping at straws for developers to program for your, oh my God, they really are turning into Microsoft, for your premier platform. But they don't have the install base because it's too much money.
Yeah, and I think too it was the worst possible timing. Not to belabor this too much, but number one, it came out when everyone was feeling the inflation pinch. So a $3,500 device looks ludicrous right now when the cost of living has gone up almost 30% in the last couple of years, and so they just really flopped on that timing. And then They also got the end of the metaverse hype cycle. Just as the metaverse hype cycle was ending, they launched Apple Vision Pro right as everybody was gearing up for AI. Now, Apple as a corporation had to switch gears, and all of their feature developers had to start working on coming up with ways to cram AI into stuff and not ways to integrate Apple Vision Pro and, spatial computing. So it's just a bad timing for the market. It's a bad timing for the company.
Well, we have to give it to those master programmers in the accounting department. And when they compile a check to give to Sam Altman, they do a fantastic job. I mean, we're talking Objective-C, perfect memory management level writing of a big check.
Overall, the platform updates were pretty tame. You're going to be able to reorganize icons in iOS 18. You can lock individual apps. Pretty small stuff here. I mean, I guess it's good to see RCS messaging coming to messages. It'll default too. It's going to be default over SMS.
But we've been hearing about RCS. I mean, listen to Nilay Patel on The Verge. You've been hearing about it for like a year now, right? I'm just saying. Also, as a developer keynote, I know the keynote's always a little consumery, but even the State of the Union was it was weird, right? Like Xcode was their bastard stepchild that they didn't want to talk about.
I think it got one mention in the actual keynote. At the developer keynote.
Their version of Copilot is coming out next year with a big old asterisk, right? Or later this year with a big old asterisk on it.
Yeah.
The one thing that really struck me was some of these Safari changes. The Safari API fixes and additions for Mac were wonderful. If only we could get those on iOS. So developers doing web software for Apple's mobile platforms were not hamstrung. But alas, we can't have that. Because we got to pay our 30%. We got to pay our Jizra.
I am kind of excited, about notifications from the iPhone coming to the Mac. Like, that's just going to be so great. Because, the one thing I've always thought is I wish all of these worthless notifications that I got on my iPhone would also harass me on my serious working device.
I was going to say, are you serious?
Although the screen mirroring stuff's kind of neat. And then remote control stuff like that, legitimately, like remote support on iOS is going to be really nice for family members.
The saddest thing, it was some of the mail features. I'm actually tempted to use the regular mail app now.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that.
That's really what jumped out at me, like as a user. Yeah.
I know we've been kind of snarky, but I think where Apple did nail this is every other tech event that has happened this year. Even OpenAI's, especially Microsoft's and Google's, has been cringy heavy with AI every 30 seconds. Cringe. And didn't make anyone want to use those products necessarily. In fact, if anything, the Microsoft stuff got a pretty big backlash, and now they've announced they're disabling recall by default because of the backlash it received from their event. Right? So Apple is the company so far that managed to have a pretty AI-focused event without getting me triggered. And without getting a bunch of backlash online. And they demoed not all of them, but they demoed several compelling features that I think users will actually appreciate. Like you said, the stuff in Mail actually looked kind of good. The two areas that seem really nice is the summary stuff, like when you're just looking at your list in your inbox, and also some of the summary stuff they're going to do around notifications, kind of like it's being experimented in a couple of Android phones right now. That stuff is useful, actual practical stuff that the end users are going to take advantage of the moment it ships on a device they can use it on. And so far, what I've seen from OpenAI is, kind of more infrastructure level promises about changing the world. And what I've seen from Microsoft is like this kind of clippy 2.0 Copilot stuff that not particularly interested in. None of it's made me, I've not tried any of it. None of it's really moved the needle for me on the Microsoft side. On the Apple side, I, like you, kind of think maybe I might try the actual default mail app on the iPhone again. They sure locked Spark Mail, but I mean, it looks like useful stuff. Like some of these AI features they announced, like the mail, actually useful.
Yeah, I forgot they had, of course they have to name brand everything, but I've often thought about an email client that has some sort of intelligent reply feature, right? Where if it's just, a perfunctory email that they're so easy to miss, right? That you could just reply to with something reasonable. That I know apps have done that in the past, but having it built in seems good. The only thing, again, not to be negative Nancy, though, there's not a ton of like exposure to third party developers of a lot of these features. And I'm not like, do you know what I mean? This sounded more like Apple as an app developer doing an event than, this was no Snow Leopard, right?
Yeah, there are some APIs, you're right, but most of the stuff that's sort of selling the merch was stuff that Apple has built into their own apps. That's a good point. Because there isn't like a single app or a single like new kit. I mean, there's new APIs, and like Siri has a lot of new APIs and new intents. They're like adding stuff to existing things. When they introduced augmented reality, they introduced ARKit.
All right, you could even argue some of that volumetrics API stuff really is an extension of ARKit, right? You can call it a different name, but it's kind of the same thing. I don't know. I felt like of all the, now maybe this is again grumpy old Mike, but of all the WWDCs we've covered, this was the least, developer-y.
I think you're probably right. It was the least developer focused, but it's funny how many people in the mainstream I've heard say it's one of the best WWDCs in years too. I've heard that from a couple of different folks. Like CNBC's been very hyped about this, but also just on the social medias and on a few podcasts.
That's a great point. CNBC. I feel like the audience was shareholders. That's why you get Sam Altman in the crowd and you make sure he tweets a picture of himself before the show, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm being cynical, but to me, it looks like, okay, they did some really impressive stuff on their email client. Volumetrics API is interesting. They have that audio API. I don't know anybody. I don't think a lot of people are going to use that. Because I think audio API, who's the most likely third party to want to use that? Spotify, and they hate you. Right? So seems like a problem to me.
You're not jazzed up about like the I don't know, the photo intelligence stuff. That's all the stuff. It's kind of table stakes now, right? Because we have seen this from the other vendors. The special sauce here is that Apple's trying to do a lot of it on device. Apple's trying to do maybe a little more private. Those are things those are all words I agree with. I just refrain from getting too excited until I see some of it actually proven and tested. But I guess my sensation is that they did it in the least tacky way. They sprinkled AI almost into everything, but they did it in the least tacky way.
I'm curious when this deal with ChatGPT started.
I think just a couple of weeks ago.
Right. So they did it in the least tacky way because it's just basically, I mean, I feel like this is what's always going to happen. This is going to be like what happened with the S Lady. It looks impressive.
No, I think you're kind of underselling some of they have their own models though.
Okay.
They're doing like a 2 billion model on what do you call it? 2 billion, what do you call it? On the mobile phone. They've set up the server side stuff. The whole thing was Apple Intelligence, only 2 minutes on the Open AI stuff. And I don't know for sure, but I saw reported that the system will prompt you every time before it kicks out to Open AI.
I saw that too. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so that is a great question though. How did Apple Intelligence get built?
Yeah.
Right. Is it some canned on device, I would hope, which it says it is, version of an OpenAI? Because okay, so this is like, again, I'm such a negative Nancy, but the iPads with the M4s that you still can't develop real sophisticated desktop quality software for some reason.
Yep. And really got nothing in this WWDC that changes anything for us.
And they got the goose egg, right? 0. In fact, I was watching it and I was texting with a listener of the show who is quite the iPad devotee, and they just kind of like it seems like to me, in my opinion, it's not necessarily his, that the only reason you can't have these desktop quality applications is simply a strategy tax from Apple. They want the iPad to be more of a consumption device, and they want their sweet 30%. Take that for what it's worth, right? I don't. Yeah. I don't know.
I think Apple promised a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
They promised, good image generation. They promised good summaries and good rewriting tools. They promised excellent photo search that is much superior to anything. They promised Siri that's going to be a lot better, backed by a large language model now that can pop out to OpenAI and use GPT-4o if it needs. But for all we know, when we actually start using this, it could all suck, right? Because Apple has been talking about Siri as if it's a fully competent assistant since they announced it. They've been promising a lot of this stuff, have Siri book stuff for you, have Siri take a note for you. App Intense isn't new. It's just being expanded. So a lot of like control inside the application never really took off. That's not a necessarily new thing. It can just, now there's more App Intense. The problem is when the stuff gets in the hands of end users, it's kind of sucked. They haven't really proven themselves here yet. Nobody really has, though, to be fair.
I was going to say, really I mean, they would not be alone in that. Right. Like, it's
Yeah.
I forgot who I was listening to, but I was listening to a different show and I can't remember who the hell it was. I apologize. But the dude he was half joking, but it's one of those jokes that, is actually like the truth. And he said, yeah, AI, we're still looking for a use case that makes sense. Because, if you are a college student or a high school student looking to cheat on your term paper, then ChatGPT is the best thing that's ever happened to you. Sure.
we just got a live boost from Crozan, Roa Dux. He says the biggest WWDC announcement was that iPad OS now has a calculator, and I don't have to install third-party buttons that bombard me with ads just so I can calculate how much I'm spending on diapers this month.
Yeah, but it does suck to be apps like Solver and CalcBot. So
yeah, pCalc and whatnot.
The Sherlocking never ends.
So here's what I was able to kind of put together. So they have this category of what they're calling developer intelligence APIs. And what you get in there is Image Playground, which is like their stable diffusion. You get AI writing tools that are built into the standard editable text view. So if your app uses the standard text view, you've got these. Siri Kit has got a bunch of updates. I think this is where most of the stuff has gone. And then, they've expanded a lot of those app intents. So out of everything we've heard, that's, I think, what developers get their hands on looking at this. There's not a lot there. App Intents is kind of your best option to expand your integration with what they're doing.
But there's when we get down to it during this week, and they actually should reveal the documentation and everything, there's going to be a bunch of guardrails on that.
It also feels like a device upgrade play, because one of the things that Wall Street's been kvetching about is that nobody's upgrading their iPhones. There hasn't been a compelling reason to upgrade their iPhones. And so the upgrade cycle has been delayed. And so that's one of the reasons their stock has been punished recently. Well, isn't it interesting that this only works on the iPhone like 15 Max? Maybe the Pro, I'm not sure. And M1 Max, even though they have this offload to the cloud functionality. So really, you're gonna have to get the iPhone 16 to take advantage of this stuff. And they're going to have another event where they announce the iPhone 16. And it's going to be a $1,200 phone to get access to these AI features that are really all open source tools that they've packaged up and probably polished. And then there's no guarantee it's going to be any good. It's a big roll of the dice.
And they're going to go on and talk about their AI specific processing on their chips, blah, 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 blah. Right. Yeah, they got to move those iPhones.
And I think to your point earlier, consumers will still be confused / oblivious to the difference between what's private and on device and what's getting punted to ChatGPT and what's getting uploaded to Apple's cloud server. Like all of that's going to be really nebulous to users.
Yeah, I do wonder though if, Apple putting this on people's iPhones, does that kind of make, because I wonder how many real people use ChatGPT outside of like the tech crowd and the bullshit thought leaders on LinkedIn who are just talking about it to,
Yeah. This is going to open it up to a whole millions of people. At scale, right? It's not going to be the 2.2 billion that CNBC's lathering up about, oh my God, 2.2 billion users just got access to AI, but it's going to be tens of millions of people, maybe 100 million.
Well, it could have a pretty, not to torture our poor theoretical history teacher here, but it could have a lot of consequences, particularly for the high school set, right? Oh, George Washington. Hey, Siri, give me a paper on George Washington, right? It seems a little like okay, let me just ask, would this make you buy a new iPhone if you were using iPhone?
Not me, no. I think I could see some people will buy it for new emojis, really. Some people will. But I don't think so for me, because I already have ways of doing everything they've kind of outlined today. And I don't know. I've been migrating to the Pixel, and so there's not enough to really kind of stop that trend. Google's working on similar stuff, I imagine. I don't know. There could be some backlash to this too, so we'll see. Like, I've already heard from some people, they're like, I don't want everybody that has me in their contact list to be able to just generate AI pictures of my face just because they've got me in their phone book. I'm not comfortable with that. Like, can I opt out of this?
Yeah. Yeah, I could see some problems there.
Yeah, I've already seen people complain about that. So we'll see. Would it make me buy one? No. Would I consider it if I'm thinking about getting an iPhone anyways? Yes, because I've got a 14 today.
So do I.
So if I could get a 16, kind of in that range where it's time to upgrade anyways, it might push me over the edge, especially if they add a bunch of more neural cores or something to the iPhone 16 so it can do more of this stuff locally. Because again, like I go back to it, it's like, say I want to generate a funny picture of you or I make you look like Jar Jar. How do I know that's being done on my phone versus the cloud?
First of all, Jar Jar looks like me.
Right, of course. But the question is like, if I had a more powerful phone, do I have a better shot of that stuff going locally? Like, all these things are really nebulous, but it would be a factor, I think, in my upgrade. What about for you? Since you're on a 14, does it push you over the edge to a yes?
Because of stupidity, we'll call it today, I did not have my phone for several hours. And I got to tell you, you know what feature I missed the most out of my phone?
What?
Like Slack and email.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Of course, my wife was with me, but I don't know anybody's phone numbers. Right, so I could not get messages out because I'm so used to just having my phone right there in my front pocket to be like, oh, let me fire something off to Chris and Wes or to Dave or, insert customer here. It was weirdly, like, one, it really heightened obviously it wasn't top of mind at that time, but thinking about it a little bit, the dependency on just those apps. And just about every app I've named has been on the iPhone since, I don't know, when did Slack come out? Slack might be the newest one, right? But still, iPhone 10? It's been around.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, the things I actually use my phone for are, I know this sounds like I'm a barbarian, telephone calls, various messaging jobs, right? Emails, Slack, text, and I listen to just a disturbing amount of history podcasts.
That's pretty similar, yeah.
And then I rage listen to certain Apple podcasts. The idea that I would be like, oh, let me go, and if you're thinking it's going to be $1,200, I remember when I used to think that like $800 was a ton of money to spend on one of these things.
Oh yeah, they keep cracking up the price, and they got to have a new way to justify it. So those new AI dedicated fancy features, probably how you justify that price going up, right?
I don't think Linux Unplugged, which was, by the way, a great show this week. I listened yesterday. I don't think it's going to sound any better on an iPhone 16 than it doesn't, right? You know what I mean? It's just going to make no difference. It for what I use my phone for, and what I would wager most of the audience and just most people in general use their iPhones for. If you have a relatively modern model, you're probably okay.
Yeah, unless there's one of these that really appeals to you, I suppose. Yeah, we'll see how it drives the sales. I guess it really depends on customers. We got a little bit of teasing about Xcode, but not much. We know that it's going to include some kind of predictive code completion powered by a model specifically trained for Swift and Apple SDKs. It's going to need an Apple Silicon Mac. You're going to have at least 16 gigs of RAM, Mac OS 15. Kind of the standard.
Which, if you're working in Xcode, I would be shocked if you didn't. So,
yeah. Yeah, and then, so we got that in the State of the Union. We got a little more Apple Vision Pro update in the State of the Union. In there, we saw that they're improving the room tracking features. So the Apple Vision Pro can now take better advantage of tilted surfaces, like, a CAD table or something that's at a surface that's kind of at an angle. And it supports, like, doing this with multiple rooms now. So, like, you can leave windows in more places. I don't know. Not a lot there. But there's some stuff in the State of the Union for the Apple Vision Pro and some stuff for Xcode. But again, not a ton yet. Of course, it's still going on as we record. So more may land. Keep an eye on that.
Do you think there's going to be a lot more for the Vision Pro?
Maybe. If it's a super, super slow burn, the one thing that made me kind of go, oh, maybe they really are going to take a 10-year view with this is, do you notice they just announced partnerships with Blackmagic and Canon to shoot video for the Vision Pro?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
That is like something I'm surprised they didn't get cooking 2 years ago. But probably secrecy prevented them from doing it. But if you could start designing, even if it's just a couple of like Apple TV Plus things, if you could start making content for the Vision Pro, it'd be a winner. Just by my experience on the Quest, video games in VR, like games that are made for VR, especially by the Meta Studios, are so much more engaging than regular games. So much better. That when more and more people get access and exposure to this, it's like the difference between going from 8-bit to high definition. It's just huge. It's a huge leap in quality. And I think if Vision Pro could do that with good audio and video content, like you're maybe one of the Apple TV series, you could actually stand in the room while it's happening and look around or something. Then I think they could start selling more of those things as the price comes down. But that's the kind of thing that if they're just now getting lenses and they're just forming their first partnerships, it's going to take 5 years before any serious content emerges for that.
Yeah, and they're going to have to get that price point down. Like a lot, right?
No hint of that. No hint of that. Interesting that we already got OS 2 when the product's only been out for like 6 months instead of just like Apple Vision OS 1.4, which is really what they should have done. Same with iPad. You can barely call this thing a new iPad OS unless there's just more stuff in there they didn't tell us.
If you call it a full feature bump, then maybe some analysts like Goldman or Bank of America will bump your stock. Do you not understand how this works?
Ask not what your podcast can boost for you, but what you can boost for your podcast.
And we got some boosts. Sam Squanch is our baller booster, getting it on sale this week for 22,222 sats, a row of McDucks.
Things are looking up for old McDuck.
Things are indeed, Sam Squanch. No message, just sending us some support, and we appreciate that. And Tampa Trekkie came in with a hot boost to 20,000 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
Says, give us that Apple dub news. Thank you, Tampa Trekkie. Appreciate that support. Speaking of Star Trek, as a quick aside, Paramount was going to be sold to Skydance. Then that apparently has fallen apart. Now I think there's a new purchaser, but I haven't been able to figure out who they are. Star Trek is in the lurch, Mike. Paramount's up for sale.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, poor Paramount. Oh,
it's such a mess over there.
Well,
Oh, I know.
It's pretty terrible. We did get another boost in. I think this is below the line, but I think this is pretty funny, asking about who were the original Borg. And I only feature this one because I don't know. Who were the original? Were they? They're not humans, right? They weren't originally people, were they?
This is one of the funnest kind of fanfic theories in Star Trek, is what was the origin of the Borg. And one of the really fun ones is the origin of the Borg is the same species that fixed up V'ger in Star Trek the Motion Picture and turned him into that giant machine, or Voyager 1. So that's one theory. There's a couple of theories out there about a couple of books that cover it that aren't very good, but it's a fun question. I don't know. If anybody has a theory, boost in.
Yes, the Star Trek expanded novel universe of strange fan. It's fanfics like down here. They're just like ChatGPT'd up a little bit.
I think they call it beta canon, right?
Let's just ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm doing this live. If ChatGPT 4.0 says you will be the first Borg, Michael, then we have a problem.
Fun will now commence.
What was the base species for the original Borg?
Yeah,
it's not letting me do that. It won't let me hit return. I
could go ask Gemini. Maybe it's more advanced. Where did the Borg come from?
It says they won't give me an. It says it's shrouded in mystery.
Is that what it says?
Yeah.
The exact origin of the Borg remains a mystery in Star Trek. However, some details have been revealed. We know they come from the Delta Quadrant. It's an ancient species, cybernetic evolution. And Star Trek Voyager reveals that the Borg had already started assimilating species as early as the 1400s on Earth. There you go. Well, that was a weird rabbit hole. Magnolia Mayhem comes in with 15,157 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
My Q alternate reality wish is the stuff I've already done. Either stay in the military or stay farming chickens. Surprisingly, the farm job is closer to tech.
It's not that surprising.
I started asking this in Matrix, but someone suggested I boost in since it's ostensibly a programming show. Is there any canonical origin species? Oh, there's the one you found earlier.
That's the one. Yep.
There you go. Yeah, of course. Yes, the coder program. I understand. Makes sense.
Right, for all your assimilation needs.
That's right.
Although honestly, just write to Sam Altman. I mean, it's got to be him, right?
You think he'd answer?
Oh, I think you don't even have to hit send. He's already reading it.
Adversary 17 came in with 10,313 sats. No message.
BOOST.
Just the support, and we really appreciate that. The Golden Dragon comes in with 9,001 sats.
Everything's under control.
Over 10,000. He says, "Grats on the Autodesk project. That's huge. Hopefully this helps a little towards not missing Coder for the summer."
Yeah.
Thank you, Golden Dragon. Appreciate that. Faraday Fedora came in with a row of ducks. I think Mike is just saying he used Google's Gemini so we don't realize he's actually the one responsible for OpenAI outages.
You got me.
That's true. You did just go to ChatGPT there. That is true.
That is true.
Busted. I wonder how Faraday Fedora put that together. Well done. Detective work there. Mr. Pibb comes in with a row of ducks. Boosting for more Coder hot takes on these hot days of summer. Don't take a break. There's plenty of bacon to sizzle. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about all the bacon that wouldn't get cooked. Here, let's fry a little bit up right now for you. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Pibb. Crashmaster comes in with, you wouldn't believe it, it's a row of ducks. Google needs to track their privacy and security issues. I agree. I asked this last week, and I think it should be public. Remember when we talked about their database leaking? Too bad we can't see Microsoft's version as well. Cloud SaaS apps do not issue CVEs, but they probably should be made to issue privacy and security issues so consumers can make informed decisions. Can I just remind everybody, and Crashmaster, thank you, that's an excellent point. Mike, can I just remind you and everybody that we have heard jack crap about the XY or XE vulnerability? We had multiple persistent attackers at least.
I forgot about it.
Right. Microsoft owns GitHub, took down the whole GitHub, supposedly was doing some kind of investigation. Was it a nation state? Are other open source projects affected? Zilch. Nada. What's up with that? What's up with that? Oh, what's up with that?
A lot of projects were using that, right? The cascading liability. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. You'd think some people would want some answers. I would think. I guess I'm the only one. Watsy comes in with 2,222 sats. No message, just sending us a boost to support the show, which we appreciate. It's nice to have you out there. Thank you, everybody. We had 9 boosters this week, and we stacked 85,581 sats. Not our best. Not our best, but thank you, everybody who did boost in. Round of applause. We appreciate every message we got and every boost we get. You guys are the best. If you'd like to boost, go get a new podcast app. Something like Fountain FM. You can boost from their website if you search for Coder Radio, or try out the new experience with chapters and Podping for when a new episode goes out and you get it within 90 seconds. And, of course, transcripts and mini apps. Now 20,000 podcasts taking advantage of those podcasting 2.0 features. And you get them in Fountain and Podverse and Cast-O-Matic and others. It's a great way to support each production, too, and get your message on the show. It's podcastapps.com if you want to try it out. Fountain.fm is my current daily driver. You might like it too. Thank you, everybody who streams sats as well. We really appreciate that. All right, we did it, Mr. Dominic. Another WWDC in the bag. So at least our initial reactions. These things tend to kind of have ripple effects that still require further analysis later on. But
that's right. Another shareholder commercial, down and done.
Yeah, but now with cool parkour effects, I mean, that, the CFED is really the load-bearing.
Yeah, I think next year, just put him in the octagon.
Yeah.
But let's have him go against, what's that guy who wanted to fight Mike Tyson?
Yeah, I can see that. That'd be good. He's his hair and him. He's definitely the load-bearing person for that entire event now. It's kind of funny how that's developed over the years. So it's the Craig Fedge, and I'm kind of a stand for Federici, or for Craig Federici. I got to admit it. I'm a Craig stan a little bit. I kind of like it.
Next CEO, and if he's not,
we'll revolt. Yeah.
We'll revolt.
Anywhere you want to send the folks before we get out of here?
Go ahead to alice.dev, and I have no idea what is going on with Twitter, but I'm at Dumanuko on Twitter. So
sure, Weapon X it up. I'm at Chris LAS over there. Bunch of great shows over at the JupiterBroadcasting.com. We are not going to be live next week, which also means you probably won't hear your boost in the next episode, but the one after. So just so you know, We're most likely gonna have a pre-record if all goes to plan. We generally try to keep JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar up. And of course, if you subscribe to our RSS feed, then you don't really have to think about it because you just get a new episode every single week. That's at coder.show/RSS. Coder.show/574 for links to what we talked about today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on everything as well. What did you think of WWDC? What announcement did we miss that we should have covered? Boost in and let us know. Love to hear your thoughts in general. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Coder Radio program. See you back here next week.